Did you know that inflation has the power to make or break economies? It can turn millionaires into paupers, prices of goods can skyrocket overnight, savings can lose value, and suddenly everything feels more expensive. But what if you could take control of your financial future by understanding the truth about inflation? Have you ever felt the impact of inflation on your personal finances? Inflation is a complex economic force that affects us all in very real and tangible ways, but it's often misunderstood, and the myths and misconceptions surrounding it can lead to confusion and uncertainty. In this video, we'll tell you what's true and what's not about inflation, including what causes it and how it affects the economy and your personal finances. So by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what inflation is, how it works, and most importantly, how to take control of your financial future in a world of rising prices. First of all, let's understand the definition of inflation. At its most basic, inflation is the rise in the prices of goods and services over time. This means that the same amount of money you have today might not be able to buy you the same things a year from now because prices will likely have gone up. Inflation is measured using something called the inflation rate, which is the percentage increase in prices over a certain period of time. Economists use various methods to track prices and calculate the inflation rate, including monitoring the prices of a basket of goods and services that are representative of the economy. There are several reasons why inflation happens, and economists generally categorize them into three main types: demand-pull inflation, cost-push inflation, and built-in inflation. Demand-pull inflation happens when there's a lot of demand for goods and services, but not enough supply to meet the demand. This can be caused by things like economic growth, low interest rates, or government stimulus programs that encourage people to spend more money. When there is more demand than supply, businesses can raise their prices and people will still be willing to pay for what they need. Cost-push inflation happens when the cost of producing goods and services goes up, which leads to higher prices. This can happen for a variety of reasons, such as an increase in the cost of raw materials, labor, or transportation. When it costs more to make things, businesses may need to raise their prices to maintain their profit margins. Built-in inflation, also known as the wage price spiral, happens when workers demand higher wages to keep up with the rising prices, and businesses then raise their prices to cover the higher wages. This can create a cycle where wages and prices keep increasing, leading to even more inflation. Each of these causes can affect inflation in different ways, and they can also interact with each other. For example, if there is high demand for a product, businesses may be willing to pay more for the materials needed to produce it, which can then increase the cost of production and lead to cost-push inflation. Understanding the different causes of inflation can help us make sense of why prices are going up and what we can do to manage our money in a world of rising prices. There are some common myths and misconceptions about inflation, so let's see what they are, along with the explanations of why they are not true. Number 1. Inflation is always bad. While high inflation can certainly be a problem, a little bit of inflation can actually be a good thing for the economy. It can encourage people to spend money now rather than hoard it, which can stimulate economic growth. Number 2. Inflation is caused by an increase in the money supply. While it's true that an increase in the money supply can lead to inflation, it's not the only cause. Inflation can also be caused by other factors like high demand for goods and services or a decrease in the supply of goods and services. Number 3. Inflation only affects certain types of goods. While some goods may be more susceptible to price increases than others, inflation affects the prices of all goods and services to some extent. This means that even if the price of something you buy regularly hasn't gone up, the overall increase in prices will still impact your purchasing power. Number 4. Inflation is always the result of government policies. While government policies can certainly influence inflation, there are many other factors that can contribute to it as well. For example, changes in global markets or natural disasters can affect the supply and demand of goods and services, which can impact prices. The effects of inflation can be both positive and negative depending on the level of inflation and the overall state of the economy. Let me give you some examples of how inflation can affect different groups. Number 1. Consumers. Inflation affects consumers by increasing the cost of goods and services they buy. For example, if the price of food and gasoline goes up, it will cost consumers more to fill their tanks and feed their families. This can be especially hard on low-income families who may have less flexibility in their budgets. Number 2. Savers. Inflation can be a challenge for people who save their money because it can reduce the purchasing power of their savings over time. For example, if someone saves $100 and the inflation rate is 2%, that $100 will be worth less in the future when prices have increased. Number 3. Borrowers. Borrowers can be affected by inflation in different ways depending on the terms of their loans. If someone has a fixed-rate loan, inflation can make it easier to pay off the loan over time because the value of the money they owe will be worth less in the future. However, if someone has a variable rate loan, inflation can lead to higher interest rates, which can make it more expensive to borrow money. Number 4. Businesses. Inflation can affect businesses by increasing their costs. For example, through the devaluation of assets, inflation can affect businesses. When prices rise, the value of assets held by businesses such as equipment, property, and inventory may decrease in real terms. This can make it more difficult for businesses to access credit, as lenders may view them as having lower collateral value. Also, businesses that use long-term loans to pay for investments may find that the cost of borrowing goes up, which makes them even less profitable. To lessen the effects of inflation, businesses can do things like diversify their assets, look for low-interest loans, and keep their operations flexible so they can adapt to changes in the market. Number 5. Investors. Inflation can have an impact on investment returns. For example, if the rate of inflation is higher than the rate of return on an investment, the investor may actually lose purchasing power over time. This can make it challenging to achieve long-term investment goals. Central banks manage inflation by using monetary policy tools such as adjusting interest rates, reserving requirements, and open market operations to influence the supply of money and credit in the economy. They aim to maintain price stability by keeping inflation within a target range. Central banks also use exchange rate policies to influence the value of a country's currency, which can affect inflation by influencing the cost of imports and exports. Effective communication and collaboration with other policymakers and stakeholders are also critical to successful inflation management. Inflation and interest rates are closely related, as rising inflation tends to lead to higher interest rates. This is because central banks often use interest rates to manage inflation, raising rates to control inflation when it's too high, and lowering rates to stimulate economic activity when inflation is low. Overall, central banks play a crucial role in managing inflation and maintaining a stable economy. Now we've reached the meat of the video, the section that actually answers the most pressing question, which is how to protect yourself from inflation. Here are some ways to protect yourself from inflation and manage your finances during inflationary periods. Number 1. Invest in assets that have historically performed well during inflation, such as stocks, real estate, and commodities. These assets tend to appreciate in value during inflationary periods. Number 2. Consider purchasing inflation-indexed bonds, which are designed to protect investors from inflation by adjusting the bond's interest payments for inflation. These bonds are issued by governments and corporations and can be a good option for conservative investors. Number 3. Increase your income by investing in yourself or starting a side hustle. This can help you keep up with rising prices and maintain your standard of living. Number 4. Reduce your expenses by cutting unnecessary spending and finding ways to save money. This can help you stretch your dollar further and maintain your financial stability during inflationary periods. Overall, managing your finances during inflation requires careful planning and a willingness to adapt to changing economic conditions. By taking steps to protect your money and invest wisely, you can weather inflationary periods and come out on top. In conclusion, understanding inflation and its causes, effects, and management is essential for individuals and businesses to protect themselves from its negative impacts. Myths and misconceptions about inflation can be debunked, and with the right knowledge and strategies, one can successfully navigate inflationary periods and even capitalize on the opportunities they bring. So take action today, protect yourself, secure your financial future, and most importantly, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to our channel to stay up to date with our latest content. Your support helps us continue to create informative and engaging videos like this one. Thank you for watching.